email yesterday.
I started recording right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Did?
We received the email yesterday, and I have already sent the emails to the guys. There's Gideon, Edgar, T, and others. So those who are not able to get it, they'll ask me to re-forward again. The emails about the videos you did yesterday, and also the email about the documents you shared through the zip file.
Okay, thank you.
That's all. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Let's start resuming what we learned yesterday. Yesterday we learned how to develop with MapStore. We started checking what is the main product of MapStore. I'm sharing my screen. Did I? Because I always forgot. Let me share it.
No,
Okay.
you're not sharing, yeah.
Okay, and now you can see it. We started learning what is the MapStore product in general that has a backend and front end. So you can develop in this case using a backend running on a local Tomcat. We explained the main steps of the build of MapStore product in order to understand which are the components and which are the commands to run the front end and the backend. Then we started developing with MapStore. I introduced some information about debugging and about using debugging tools specific to of Redux, and of course the debugger of the browser that can be used when you use Webpack dev server, and so you run MapStore in development mode. Then I explained how to configure the local Tomcat installation of MapStore to use the backend locally. And then I explained it, and we learned with the main folders of MapStore. Basically, all the front end is a web client with a typical structure of a Redux application, and then a directory product that contains the files that build the effective product of MapStore with the plugins.js. And then we learn how to develop a plugin and how to run it, of course. Developing a plugin consists in create one or more referenced files, but mainly the main entry point is the file in the plugins folder, usually, that have to be referred in the plugins.js file of the product if you want to run it in the product. But we will learn today how to run it in a different project. And anyway, in your project plugins.js file, you have to reference the code in order to be included and run it. And then you have to declare in localconfig.json the plugin name. This is I didn't the plugin name as a string or an alternative. I didn't mention it, but if you want to pass some configurations to the plugin, you can even use this syntax, and instead of a string, you can put in plugins desktop an object with the name entry with the same name of the string you used, and the CFG object with all the configurations. And all these configuration will be passed as properties automatically to the component that implements the plugin. We have learned that other than the main component of the plugin, you can even declare reducers, epic, and they will be included inside the plugin definition, and they will be included automatically in MapStore. Especially the epics will run if you add them, and the reducers will add a piece of state named as the object of declaration entry key. of this key of the object declaration. We'll declare a new piece of state with the state contained by the execution of the reducer. That the state will contain the state that the reducer handles. Then there is another piece that I only mentioned, containers that allow to include the plugins in other plugins. Today we will learn more about this together during the development of a GeoNode plugin, but before doing that, we have to talk a little bit about the projects, because GeoNode is de facto a MapStore project created with this procedure on the setup when we started including MapStore as a client of GeoNode. So it's important to understand this concept. As I said, MapStore is a product, but it is only a framework, also a framework. What it means? It means that other than running MapStore locally in your web app, you can create another web app or another repository using somehow MapStore and building the front end, or the front end and the back end, by running a program called here in the root called create-project.js. Here in MapStore, if you run, let me check out master. Maybe I have to zoom a little bit to allow you to. Now I'm in the root of the MapStore cloned repository. So here you can see that there is a web client directory, web is here, web client directory, and the other files are together with the other files, we can find also the create project script, this one. If you run node, you will the program. This program is interactive. They will ask you a series of questions if you want to create a standard product or a custom product, the product name, and many other questions. Product name, the version, the description, and so on. And then the output folder. This process will create, and let's do it. For instance, standard is default. Let's call it training. Project version is okay, 1.0.0. In parentheses, you can see the defaults. You can provide a description if you want. A project for training. Repository URL is not mandatory. Output folder, I can create. Usually, I create it outside the repository, and I can create, for instance, here in a upper directory, in a directory named training. This will clone. This will create an alternative a folder with a structure like this that is a little similar of the MapStore one, and it contains more or less all the files required to create a customization of MapStore that can be almost similar. If you choose the standard product, will be more or less it will create a project that is as a starting point more or less MapStore as it is. So the same plugins, the same pages, the same user interface, the same files and configuration of the standard MapStore. Or if you select for instead a custom product, you will have a product that doesn't have almost nothing, and you can start adding things from App Store. There are two ways of creating products. One, starting from App Store as it is. So if you choose the standard product, I imagine you want to have a MapStore and create your custom plugins, but you need to install MapStore somewhere with some custom plugins on your interest. And instead, if you choose a custom product, you want to create your own application that can be unrelated with MapStore, but can use MapStore utilities, functions, components, reducers, and so on somehow. But they are only a part of your product, not the main part. This is taking, okay, let's gd training. As you can see, the directory has been created. And here you can see a structure with the index.js, index.html files, as well as we have in web client directory, a JS directory when you can place your custom JavaScript, some configurations copied from the original one, a build script that works exactly as the build script of MapStore, so you can use it to create a final Word file, and a backend folder when you can insert your Java code, the standard product initialize Java product as well as is MapStore, and you can add also some backend services if you need, and assets that can contain static assets you want, images, CSS, and so on. Then this folder contains also a submodule, a Git submodule. I don't know if you are confident with Git submodules. Anyway, in Git you can create submodules, and here you can the target of creating this folder is to create a Git repository. You can commit these in the questions. You have seen that there was also a Git repo, the repository URL, that it was optional because it is inserted in packages on, and you can create a Git repository starting from this folder. And in this case, MapStore, that is one of the folders inside this template of the project, is a sub repository. If you cd inside MapStore, you have the repository. This is a sub module of Git. This is their definition. This is used also in GeoNode. This has the advantage that if you want to, you have to update MapStore to the latest version. You don't have anything. You can only do it by only checking out the commit you want to update to. For instance, doing the pull or doing the git checkout master on git pull, origin master, and whatever you want. Anyway, checking out the latest version of MapStore, or checking out the version you want to be added to, and then going to the main repository in the upper directory and adding MapStore. Now I have to do a git init. I can create from here a directory, and now I can add the sub-repository, and if you look at it, what in submodules of Git, what you have is a reference to the commit hash. So anytime you can update this submodule to the latest version, and it's like a sub project somehow. So you can keep aligned simply updating this reference in your repository. You can keep updated your project with the latest version almost. So simply updating it, and of course, if something changed, give the proper changes to your product. In a project, you have the build.js, as I said, and it will produce a war called with the project name .war, of course, in the web target directory, as MapStore does. And you can run npm start as you can do it in MapStore, and you can customize, of course, your proxy and your debug configuration, as we did in the original product. Following the same procedure, you can customize the application by editing the JS app file. Here, when you create a project, you have a series of comments that tells you how to customize to, for instance, set up your custom plugins instead of using the standard default plugins of MapStore. You can even customize the pages by creating your own app config that allow you to customize your pages. App config is a file that contains all the pages of MapStore. For instance, let's see them. Yesterday I didn't mention it. Anyway, it's not important for GeoNode, but just to understand. Viewer context. The viewer is the maps, the dashboard. All the pages that can be addressed here. Here you can see dashboard and dashboard.dashboard.it. This is the case. Every address can be addressed here, is defined here, and defines a component that implements it. This is React router. It's not included in GeoStore anyway. In GeoNode anyway, it's important to understand if you want also to develop on MapStore or something similar. Okay. So you can customize whatever you want in the app.js, as I said. You can customize translations, files, and configuration, and so on. And that's it for the projects. Here, if you see somewhere in the projects, @MapStore is a shortcut that has been introduced in a project to refer to the client directory of MapStore 2. So using this, you can get every file you want from MapStore and use it in your project. That's it for the projects. So let's switch to developing in GeoNode. First of all, questions? Everything is clear? Okay. Let's start. Allora, okay. MapStore has been introduced as a client in GeoNode from version 2.10. From 2019 is the default client of GeoNode, and the integration is made using, in particular, two main projects available on GitHub: Django MapStore Adapter and GeoNode MapStore Client. Let's see them. let's see first the definition of them, and then we will go in detail of the two projects to understand it, to understand them. Django MapStore Adapter is a generic Django plugin that provides a REST API that allow MapStore to communicate with GeoNode as it is in a compliant way of the MapStore backend. So it provides the entry points to save the resources, to load some services and when you save, it contains the persistence logic that allow to adapt the model of MapStore with the model of inside the model of GeoNode. GeoNode saves layers, save maps in a particular way, while MapStore has another model. Typically, MapStore saves all maps or resources as big JSON files. Instead, Django has its model for layers and maps, and they are connected. And this model, this project implements the glue logic to refer layers in GeoNode. So if you do some changes on a layer, for instance, you change the layer name or the full style of a layer or something similar, these information are automatically updated also in the maps. This is when you, for instance, save a map from the MapStore client, MapStore will send its JSON to the server as usual, as it is a normal backend of MapStore. And GeoNode will take this JSON, analyze it, and store the changes that has been done on the maps and the layers, and update them. And when you load them, it will recreate the standard JSON that MapStore require, getting the information from the GeoNode internal model. Let me open it just to take a quick look on it. It is a 100% Python, and it has basically everything is contained basically here in the MapStore adapter directory, MapStore 2 adapter directory. It's intended to be a standard project that allow many integration, not only the GeoNode one, but here in plugins directory, there is the specific implementation in GeoNode. So there is an API that is generic, and then there is a specific implementation for the GeoNode model. But you can imagine to create another implementation that persists MapStore maps in another projects other than GeoNode. Anyway, we will see it later more in detail. GeoNode MapStore client instead is a custom MapStore project generated using the command you have seen, and it's very customized, of course, because all the backend is not present. For instance, only the front end is present, and there is instead a part of Python that provides the templates and configurations to include the client inside the GeoNode. So all the pages of GeoNode, like map and map viewer, the preview, and so on, need a template that this model provides in order to render MapStore and run it in GeoNode in the front end. So this part is contains the main part of the client itself. How to run it in developer mode? Okay, first of all, you are more or less all GeoNode users and developers, so you may be confident with this procedure. You have to install GeoNode locally. The documentation to install GeoNode locally is available here. I used the advanced installation. I have Ubuntu, so I did it I did it on my own system. So I don't want to go too much in detail because probably you are developers of Python. I'm not, so I'm not so confident. I follow this procedure to do it, and to do essentially I follow this procedure to install GeoNode by making the virtual environment and started cloning GeoNode, setting up the database, setting up the dependencies, and so on, as described here in the guidelines. So I cloned GeoNode. I cloned also in order to develop the front end and also the backend Django MapStore adapter. You have to clone the respective repositories because this first one is MapStore projects contains, as I show it, contains a submodule. If I go here in the MapStore GeoNode MapStore client, it contains here a submodule of MapStore. This is the Git submodule we have seen before. So I have to, in order to clone a repository with submodules, this is a quick shortcut to clone also the submodules inside the directory. I can clone also the other products, so I can have 3 directories like this: GeoNode, GeoNode MapStore client, and GeoNode MapStore adapter in my system somewhere. And then I can cd in GeoNode directory. This is the repository of GeoNode cloned here. And I can create a virtual environment in order to work with Python with it. Now I'm in the GeoNode virtual environment where I already installed. Of course, I did all these operation to install the requirements and PyGDAL workaround explained here in the documentation. Here, this, and I installed also the requirements and so on. I already did it. I set up, of course, the database. There are some instructions here about how to do it. I set up the Postgres database by, of course, installing Postgres on my machine and then setting up the user GeoNode, setting up the permissions and creating the extension Postgres for it, and editing the permissions to access to the database and configure it. By editing the settings.py file. but here I modified this file in order to, let me see the changes. I removed the Italian just for just to avoid that the browser automatically switch to Italian, so it will use English for this course. And default settings are okay in my configuration. Database is the default configuration here in the sample are okay. I renamed the settings changes with my own local settings changes, and see. I removed this and renamed it as settings. So the default let me recover it. The default settings here are okay for my database, so I didn't do any changes anyway. Here there are some settings for it, and basically the standard procedure of installing GeoNode in development mode. For other details, of course, refer to the documentation. And in order to use my own settings, I use this environment variable that provides the settings that I need. Let's see. In GeoNode model. This one. This is the file of the database I was looking for. Okay. This was originally the sample file, and I renamed it, removing the .sample. And all the configuration, if you follow the documentation here to set up the database, is okay for to be used. All the configurations are here. The only thing that I have to specify to use this file is, of course, sorry, I already did this command, but defining this environmental variable allow me to start a GeoNode using this local setting as configuration. Then if you are confident with GeoNode, you will know that starting power start will use for GeoServer you will use Jetty for GeoServer, but is not GeoServer doesn't work very well with Jetty, and so for this reason I installed the GeoServer, downloaded here. All the information, of course, are here. Inside Tomcat on my own, the Tomcat installation on my own, by deploying the war provided by the when I run power init, if I remember well, power or power setup and power sync, I have the utility power downloads a customization of GeoServer that will be run in Jetty if you run power start, and this Word file can be used in a separated Tomcat to allow to make GeoServer working better. That that is simple. That to avoid the problems that can have in Jetty, like memory issues and so on. For this reason, so I can start the GeoNode, the GeoServer related to GeoNode, just by opening another terminal here. and running the. Here I installed my Tomcat here, and here I can run it as we did yesterday with MapStore War, running bin startup.sh. As you can see here, there is this is the GeoServer you are interested. There are other applications now for me, but it's not important. I can run this Tomcat, and I will see on port localhost 8080 / GeoServer, as well as its source. You can monitor it by logging tail -f logs on the startup. The GeoServer is starting. Yes, and you can see that this GeoNode version of GeoServer is running on port localhost 8080 with standard credentials and so on. So the configuration about the port, etc., are as well as the database are here in the local settings.py, and you can override them even using some environment variables, as well as I did to use the local setting if you need. For instance, here you can see GeoServer location, localhost 8080. The standard, as I said, the standard local settings.py.sample you can find in Django uses all the ports of standard of a standard Tomcat and of a standard Postgres. So if you use this configuration with standard ports and so on, the simple file is to start up GeoNode. I set up the environment variable. I started GeoNode running on localhost 8080. So instead of running power start, I can only start up Django by running power startup Django here. Oh well. Here I have not defined I'm not in the correct directory. Failed. Don't startup Django. Should. I don't know what's up. Start Django, not startup. I wrote it wrongly here. Okay, and now you will see. Let me open the other browser. You will see here in localhost 8000 GeoNode running, and this is the standard GeoNode. Okay, you can sign in with the default credentials and so on. Okay, now how to develop with these two parts with how to develop on MapStore models using this. Yes, more or less we have the same we have the same procedure that you can find in other models in GeoNode. By the way, I usually when you run let me get to the previous. Usually, when you create a GeoNode and run it in edit mode, what you do is to pip install the requirement that installs all the modules, and then pip install -e for E stands for edit mode, dot, because the dot is the GeoNode directory. This allows to run the GeoNode module in edit mode. If you see pip freeze, if you run pip freeze, here you can see all the modules installed by the requirements by running pip install requirements, and here you can see the module GeoNode running in edit mode. You can see -e here for the module GeoNode. And the same is this. I did it by installing the module GeoNode here in this way. This is what you find in the documentation. The same thing you can do with the MapStore, the two MapStore models. So you can uninstall them from the list, because here when you install the requirements, these requirements doesn't include GeoNode, and here you include it explicitly in edit mode, while they include MapStore models, because when you develop on GeoNode, you may be interested to use the module MapStore, the models of MapStore in normal mode, so you are not interested to edit them. And in this case, you can see they are installed by default as requirements of GeoNode. If you want to edit that specific models, you can edit them by referring the edit mode to the directory you cloned here. So you can uninstall the Django GeoNode MapStore and install it as a reference to the directory that you cloned here. So, and the same is for GeoNode MapStore client. You can uninstall it and install it, reference it to the directory you cloned. So basically here I have this structure. I created this structure in my environment. So I have GeoNode and two other models in the same directory. So I can refer them by doing ... and then GeoNode. I'm here now. I am in GeoNode directory. I can uninstall and install them in edit mode. Here, as you can see, I run at a pip freeze. So in my model, I already did it in my environment. So you can see these two models are already in edit mode. Anyway, running these commands, you can uninstall the standard Django MapStore model cloned here and use your own to develop. And as I said, when you run pip freeze, you will see these three models in edit mode GeoNode and the other ones. We already talked about setting up Tomcat, setting up GeoNode in general, and the database too, and local settings too, and we already started Django. Now, when I started Django here, I run it in let me close this just a second. Let me get also this. As I said, when I run Django, it's already with all the models in dev mode. So any change I do to these models is automatically forwarded to the recompiled, and refreshing GeoNode will automatically refresh the Python part of MapStore modules as well as the GeoNode one. So for instance here, if I put somewhere for instance some print file it will be executed and forward. Okay, let me go further. As I said, this helps to develop on the backend on the backend side. You probably know more than me how to develop in Python, in GeoNode especially. But the front-end part is not included here, or better, it is included in the model, but is compressed, so you cannot run MapStore using this setup. You cannot develop on MapStore front-end part. And now I'm going to explain how to do it. Questions until now? As usual, I bored to death someone, and so they can respond because they are dead. Can you hear me? just a feedback to understand if you are there, or
Yeah.
okay, fine.
Fine. I think we understand this concept, especially because we've already worked with this journal, so it's not much complicated. I have one question. How we can make this MapStore development mode where the application is in production? I mean, GeoNode is in production, and how we can make this MapStore development? Like say right now, I have GeoNode which is using, people they are using theirs, and I need to do some editing in MapStore. How can make it?
Yes, yeah. Now I'm going. You can develop and then commit your changes, and rebuild of maps the model. So it will, and redeploy, of course. You know. Let's see it. Let's see it in detail. Yes, as I said. Now I'm going to explain more or less how to do it.
Okay. At least one another question. You did this under the development mode of the, I mean, Ubuntu. What if we installing this GeoNode in Docker? There maybe in description if it's working under Docker.
I think it will work in Docker. I never did it, but I think that it's almost the same. If you can run these commands somehow, you can set up Python running in edit mode as well, I think. I don't know if there is a specific, yes, there is a specific entry here.
Yeah.
And probably is already described in Docker, and probably you can use the same concepts. You can run in edit mode the models, and it will run. And if you do some changes on the file, you will have as well, some changes on the backend. But I'm not Docker. I don't use Docker too much, so I'm not so expert to tell you that it works. And I didn't do did it.
Oh, okay, let's
Yes.
continue. I think. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, okay. Now let's recap a little bit. We set up the GeoNode. We have seen just doing a checksum. We have seen that the implementation is made of two modules that are dependencies of GeoNode. The two models, one implements the backend API, and it's a generic for Django and has a specific implementation for GeoNode model. The other module instead is the front-end part that contains the front-end part. So all the HTML set subset of the front of the Python and HTML templates that allow to display essentially the front end. You can after you install the GeoNode and run it in edit mode, you can do the same by installing these two models in edit mode and running running GeoNode, and then this will allow you to develop at least the Python part of these of these two models. Now let's see a little bit how to because the front end is not cannot be developed in this way. Let's see how to do it. Okay, by default, at this stage, we are discussing how to improve this. But at this moment, every changes we do to the front end part, we commit on the module the compiled version of the GeoNode. So every time we do some changes, we commit also the changes in the compressed files, and we of course push this to the repository. This makes the module running, the Python module running with the compressed files inside it, and this makes the module running without any interaction, additional interactions for the user. So this simplifies the usage of this module when you are not developing in MapStore, because everything works because all the JavaScript files are there, are compressed and are available. In order to so every change you have to do, you have to compile and commit your changes. The root of the project is GeoNode MapStore client. Inside GeoNode MapStore client is another directory with the same name, GeoNode MapStore client. Inside it, inside the project, and slash client. Here, all the client is contained here, and you can run here all the commands command of MapStore. You can run npm update or npm yarn install here. Here, GeoNode use yarn also to install the dependencies. That is another utility for the client. You can replace it with npm install and don't care about it. And you can run compile, as I said, to compile and the compressed file and push them on any change you do. To develop them, you have to do some configuration, some run npm start in a particular way. You have to edit this client and this env.json file inside the GeoNode MapStore client directory. You can find it here. And.json, you can find it in the client directory. This is the correct path. Client env.json, and here you can insert the URL of GeoNode. This one, when GeoNode running, and the dev server protocol. You can do the same with if you have some remote you can do the same with a remote server, and it's okay. If you are running GeoNode, then you are developing only on the front end. You can do whatever you want here. And after setting up this file, you can run here npm. Let me open another console here. And here you can go gd to the client directory and run npm start. This will run the Webpack dev server on, as usual, on localhost 8081 and proxy all GeoNode part. This installation of this setup of the dev server is created to proxy all GeoNode together and replace the compressed files with the not compressed files. So here, when Webpack starts, you will see GeoNode running as usual. And when you develop in the using this port, you will see the code, the JavaScript code uncompressed. So you can, and on every change, you will see the changes as well as in MapStore. We will see automatically recompiled, the tool recompiled and run it. So summarizing, you have GeoServer running on port 8080, GeoNode running on port 8000, and MapStore development mode that proxies GeoNode. So there is, in fact, you will see here GeoNode running using these files, these as a proxy, running on port 8081. So here the Webpack dev server started, so you can see on localhost 8081 GeoNode running. You can sign in. You can open maps. I already created one. And here, if you look at the sources, you can go to actions.map and debug as well. For instance, change map view. That this action is called every time the map view changes, and you can see that you can debug it as well as a normal MapStore. You can even add to the URL debug while true. And you will see the developer tools running. So here you can see the actions triggered. Mouse out, for instance, is triggered every time I go out to the map For instance, you can see the actions and the state diff and so on. If I zoom in, you can see the change zoom level, the action triggered, the zoom level that changed, and so on. And this is, and as well as you change, for instance, I'm going to the zoom in plugin, and for instance, what's this? This is the zoom in of open layers. Zoom in plugin. Here I'm working in MapStore, but you can imagine you can modify the files you want. You cannot, of course, if you want to modify internal file of a Git submodule, you have to fork MapStore, because if you need to commit them, you cannot commit them if they are not intended to be part of the standard product. You have to fork it, but anyway, now I can change all the files I need. For instance, I can change the help text, the tooltip, and I can see, I can write my custom tooltip here, and instead of increased zoom here, I will have a custom tooltip. So every change is automatically forwarded as well as in MapStore. So here you can decide to do two things, basically. One thing is to, of course, work, if you are working on contributing on MapStore product in general, and you are simply testing here, the parts here, and you want to commit to MapStore in general, you can modify your internal submodule and do your commits on your fork and do pull requests to the MapStore product, so they will be included. And otherwise, if you want to do some customization, that is the most common case, you can do it by customizing your own files. As I said here, you can use the developer tools and so on and so on. Let's see a little bit in detail how this model is implemented in order to understand where to customize things. Django GeoNode MapStore client has some standard files for the Python models, and then there are 4 folders, and the standard files of an application in Django, and the init file of Python as well. The hook sets here that defines the entry points needed here, and this hook set uses the Django MapStore adapter and parts. So this is the persistence part, and this hook set uses them to persist things, to provide the effective entry points, and it provides also the templates, the templates entries for the layers, layer map, or the map, the edit map entry points, and so on. So every used every point where, I have to go here. This is my running distance now, localhost 8081. Every point where MapStore is running is implemented by a template in HTML that run MapStore, and in a particular mode we will see how it's done, and initialize the client. For instance, here you have the preview what's the name of the template? Let me remember. The embed the I don't remember exactly, but it should be the standard one. The base and the layer edit, layer start, layer view. Maybe it's it, or embedded. I don't remember exactly. But this is implemented by one template. If you go in the view map mode, this is implemented by the view map, the view map, the map view mode. This is the map view. If you instead set up editing tools and you want to edit the map, you go in edit mode. This is implemented by the edit map templates and so on. So other than the hook sets that refer the templates, there are the templates here that are HTML files that are with some, you have seen them in Django probably. There are HTML files that has some particular syntax to include also Python variables and syntax. And then there is the static directory where the the compressed files are committed and have to be committed in order to make them part of the standard GeoNode model. And then here you have the client part that contains the custom JavaScript for GeoNode, the Git submodule. As I said, it's a standard, is a custom. This is a custom MapStore project, so it has the Git submodule for MapStore, and then a folder with the theme customizations and so on. This is very simple here. Let's see a little bit more the JS directory.
Lorenzo, can you
Yes.
take like 5 minutes of break?
Sorry?
Can you take like 5 minutes of break?
Okay, yes, fine.
Come back after 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Let's get back at 25. It's okay for you?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, sure.
Yes. Or if you want a longer break, we can even.
No, that's I think is enough. That's
okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Fine. So I resume the recording and I restart talking about what we were talking about. Okay, so we learned how to install in MapStore in edit mode. We learned how to debug MapStore Frontend.
Your screen.
Oh,
Your screen is very
sure.
important.
Yes, thank you. We learned how to install GeoNode in edit mode and the models in edit mode. We learned how to run the front end in debug in developer mode, so I can change things. And now we are analyzing in detail the GeoNode MapStore client structure. We have seen the main folder, GeoNode MapStore client, that has a directory client dedicated to the JavaScript part, a static directory that contains static files and compressed files that have to be committed in order to be used by the standard Python module. Then we have a template tag with all the HTML that renders and runs MapStore in various contexts, and then of course the standard files for GeoNode and for Django, like these hook sets that allow to use the entry points for both HTML templates and the API implemented by the other model. Let's see the JS directory. The JS directory contains basically an API GeoNode.js file, in a GeoNode.js file inside the API subdirectory. This implements the persistence tier in order to adapt the request that MapStore usually do to its own backend, and make them and send them instead to GeoNode entry points. Basically, MapStore has a persistence tier that abstract the persistence of the various resources, like as you have seen, maps, dashboards, and so on. Here in GeoNode, we have only maps for the moment. We are thinking about including other parts. Anyway, the persistence is performed by doing requests to the backend. There's a persistence tier that does an abstraction to persist every resource on every possible client, on every possible backend service. And this file essentially provides the interface and register it in order to get a resource, so get a map configuration, create it, update it, delete it, and so on. This is implementation made with observable, as you can see, to take the data and send them to the correct entry points you can see post resource here provides a request and access.post to the entry point of the GeoNode and so on, and this persists and sends the updated, for instance, map, or sends, for instance, the updated map to the server, and the server will get this JSON file, and using the Django MapStore adapter, it will persist in the GeoNode model. So this is the front-end part of the persistence, basically, that consists in calling some APIs, doing some AJAX requests, as well as implementing an interface to do AJAX requests on the correct endpoints and with the correct format if needed. Okay, so apart from it, this is the API JS. Here there is a mismatching of names. I'll explain it why. I'll explain it a little bit better later, but basically you can as I mentioned yesterday, there are various ways to build and run MapStore. There is the standard single page application mode, there is a JavaScript API mode, and then an embedded mode. Let's see it a little bit, just to also change a little the argument, in order also to help you to understand better what we have, and also to distract somehow. Here I can share maps, and maps can be shared in embedded mode, so in an iframe, and this will call a specific entry point that contains a specific build of MapStore with a subset of the plugins existing, that this allows to make this is a private. Let me share the one that is not private. Let me edit. For instance, this. I can embed this frame in a web page, as well as, for instance, WordPress or whatever I want. And as you can see, this is a subset of plugins, very small, that is useful if you have a small small window, like in the case of embedding iframes, and this calls a specific file that has a specific build with only these plugins. This is also for to reduce the bundle size and download it faster than the standard viewer. The other mode that you have is using the API. Using these, you can create an HTML file. I can save it somewhere. I save it in my desktop. Now, if I open this file, you can see there is I'm using I have a MapStore very similar to the embedded one, but in this case here we are including some JavaScript from the backend directly in a web page that it's on my own. So here I have I can run this JavaScript code simply to run MapStore, including it as it is a library like OpenLayers or other things, and I can use the API. This is described here. You can find on documentation. I can use the JavaScript API to control it. So, for instance, I can trigger an action, for instance, and here, for instance, I can do a set timeout and trigger this action. After, for instance, 5 seconds, or let's do 10 seconds just to check. After I render it on MapStore. So in this case, here I have I refresh, and after 10 seconds, I will the action will be triggered, or I will have an error if I did something wrong. Okay, it did it. If you have seen it, I can even reduce the time. Okay, you have seen that I have controlled it. Of course, I can insert, for instance, a button here. This is HTML, so it is not. It is not JSX, so I have to remember the syntax. This is not correct. This I have to do something like. I think it's present in window. Okay, and it's probably I cannot. I can create a function that zooms here. still have an error syntax. Okay, this is inside the Java. I have to put it outside, of course. Here I have a button. When I click, some charge is not defined. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if this helps. And so I can create my own application using MapStore as a library, and this is a way that where you can use MapStore in your own application if you don't want to include the whole single page application, and that's the way that GeoNode does. So the API, it has a specific implementation for its own that with some functions, utility functions here that helps to use this API with some custom plugins and so on. All these informations about the functions are here in the framework, in the JavaScript API link in documentation. You can find all the commands here, create, and also with plugins here. All these functions are described in documentation. Anyway, here you have the utility and the functions that you can call in your own templates. Here you can find, we will see them later anyway. You can see that here you call init MapStore API, and then you get you can get the MapStore create and pass a configuration and so on. And this is the way that GeoNode integrates MapStore, so it can control it outside. You can trigger action from here. You can do whatever you want. You can pass, of course, configuration. And for instance, here, this forces to trigger the action that of a map config loaded to load the configuration of this embedded map. This is only one example of how to force the MapStore to stay and working inside the client, inside the MapStore client, not force, how to use it in MapStore client, and how to insert trigger some actions and do complex operation only by include it and controlling it by triggering action out from the outside. So, as I said, the API JS is the main entry point that is built and used inside all GeoNode. Moreover, it has some custom plugins, custom plugins that are overrides and additional components that are not present in the standard product. For instance, here we have the implementation for ArcGIS layers in OpenLayers and Leaflet. They are not part of the standard product. They are only there. And then some epics, especially some epics that do some special glue code to, for instance, integrated thumbnails of the maps and so on inside the UI. These are some epics that, for instance, handles the map update or the thumbnail setup or, for instance, the permissions and so on. Set up some changes in order to make all the interface and all the tools compliant with with MapStore, with GeoNode. And then here there is the plugins.js file, as well as we have seen in the product. This plugins.js file includes all the plugins that have to be compiled and included in this build of MapStore. This is more similar to the MapStore one, except that it contains only the plugins of the viewer, not the home page or the dashboard or other plugins. Only subset, for instance, annotations are not here. And it has its own plugins. These add reducers and epic plugins is a simple plugin that does only provides some standard reducers that have to be included in this build, and they are not included from these plugins, and includes also its own epic. So you saw this is a dummy plugin, in fact, that includes the reducer and epics that are missing and that are required by this implementation. There is another, as you can see here, there is another entry point with a subset of plugins that are used instead in the preview. So here you have only a subset of plugins here in the, let me get it, in the preview of the of the map, for instance. Here you have a subset of plugins respective of the viewer and edit mode, and these allow to have a bundled size reducer somehow with this subset. So defining only these plugins for that when you load that bundle. Moreover, you have the static folder that, as I said, contains the dist, MapStore dist directory when all the file compressed are included. Let me show it. The static. We have seen before. We have seen the client folder here and all the subfolders inside it. Now we are going to check the static folder. It contains the dist, the build, the static file build, and that have to be committed, as I said. And they are used from GeoNode in edit mode. So if you use localhost 8000, you will use these compressed files. If you run using the Webpack dev server, so you're running on 8081, you will use instead the uncompressed file. And apart from this, you can find also here in GeoNode JS MS2 utils all the configuration files that defines the plugins that have to be included in each viewer. So this is the replacement of the local config, basically. This is how we implemented local config in GeoNode. If you remember, when you had to insert to define plugins here, to add the plugin, you had to do three things: create the file, insert into plugin.js. Let me get the correct slide. Yes, insert it into plugin.js, and in this case we have our own plugin.js in the JS directory. There are two, one for preview and one for plugins. And add it to the local config. The third point was add it to the local config.json file. This local config.json file, that is the configuration of MapStore for every page. Here is the part that was of the local config is taken by these configurations that are specific of many points. So even if you use two different builds to has a more compressed or less smaller or a bigger web bundle to download, this is the reason why we have two different plugins and preview plugins. We have many configuration that uses these plugins in order to have less or more plugins inside our viewer, our embedded viewer, our composer. The composer is the edit mode, and so on. For this, here you can modify these files in order to add or remove plugins from one specific entry point. Only by if they are included in the build file. Otherwise, you have also to include it in the build file to make it available and configurable here. Let's see them. As you can see here, there is a MapStore dist where we have all the compressed files. Here the files are compressed. And other directory is GeoNode JS MapStore 2 MS2 utils. And here we have the configuration that has the same shape of the local config. So you have a desktop and a mobile mode if needed. Anyway, here only the desktop is included. Desktop pantry with all the plugins, and as you can see, you can find the plugins included as a string, or here we have as a string like this, or as object with the name as we defined here, as a string or as an object. For instance, here in the base file, these files are merged together inside the HTML template. These are only subsets of plugins that can be used inside the templates. So, for instance, here there is a base so plugins that contains the plugins that are used by all the configurations. So drawer, menu, cookie, etc. And then there is another configuration for edit plugins that contains the talk and other plugins that are not present. For instance, add layer. If you can see add layer, let's see just by example. Add layer is a plugin that provides this button inside the table of contents. This is not present in the talk if you are using it in view mode, for instance. If you view the map without editing it, it should be missing. Sorry, not this. This put me in view mode anyway. If I log out and I view the map from I'm in view mode now. And the add layer should not be present. But then maybe I did something wrong with the login. And anyway, it is not present, of course, in the. For instance, here in the preview, we don't have the table of contents, so we don't have this. And this is configured by the composer and the viewer embedded. The viewer doesn't have the token, so we will see it better when we see the templates where some layers, some plugins are included or excluded. Maybe this is the reason why I found it anyway here, because I have the catalog. Maybe this is configured to use this. Okay, okay. Anyway, I'm in the wrong. Lost 8080. I have to use it if I want to debug MapStore. Okay, let's go to the next step. And here you have the configurations, and here we have the templates. The templates are instead built are part of the Django tool. So and Django and GeoNode. So if I do some changes in the templates and I'm running it in edit mode, that will be automatically redeployed by Django itself. So for instance here, let's see, templates, map embed. Here I have some changes here. Here you can see that the templates. There is I'm not going to specific in every entry point that implements every part of view and etc. because it's boring and because it's not. I think it's not useful. You can look at them better than me and understand what they are doing. Each you can check each element what implements in the GeoNode infrastructure and so on. But I can explain you that I think is most useful how you can what happens here with the configurations. First of all, there is some glue code to implement the to provide the users and the access token proper to the GeoNode in order to integrate the security with of GeoNode in MapStore. This is the first part, and then the configuration. You can see there is a utility function defined here in the API. Entry point API.js. I mean. This is an utility function that merges the desktop configurations. Here it uses reduce and object.keys. It uses many entry point, many operation to create a configuration object that merges the plugins and replace if they are duplicated. They are putting unique plugin and merging these two configurations. And then it provides also the configuration for mobile cloning, and this creates the final configuration that is passed to the plugins configuration of the monster.create. And so in here you can create a MapStore instance that you can control from external in the div ms container that is defined here. This creates this MapStore instance inside that using the plugins defined here. If you want, I can console.log this in order to maybe it's better to render the whole object. Here, let's wait Django to rebuild the configuration. Here we are in the, let me do it in another point because, for instance, the edit map template, that is more clear. That is more, here I can, it's almost the same except it adds some other configuration. Every entry point has its own customizations, to make it work well. Let's see it. Let's go sign in again. And let's edit the map. And here in the console, I will see this object rendered, and this is the configuration, desktop and mobile, that is basically cloned. And here you can see the configuration. You can see the map plugin, the background selector, the identifier that provides the showing on click, the table of contents, that is this, the settings plugin, the toolbar, that is this toolbar, the map loading that allow to show this loading tool as well as a move when this loading spinner that appears here, and so on. The drawer menu is the container for the table of content. Some utility like cookie, policy, advice, omnibar, that is the container for these tools, expander, that is these 3 points that allow you to show many points, many other plugins, undo and redo, that are these that allow to go back and forward in navigation history. So when I move, I can go back in a previous point that I moved to, undo and redo. The Burger menu is this one that contains all the plugins, or some entry points for the plugins. It's a container for other plugins, and map footer is the container for plugins here. From this white block is the footer that can contain other plugins like attribution and so on. And a measure is the that allow to do some measures. Print is the plugin that allow to print a current map, and zoom all is this plugin that allow to rezoom to the max extent. Here I printed in the meanwhile the PDF that zooms to max extent. Zoom in, zoom out are these plugins that implements the buttons for zoom in and zoom out. The timeline is a plugin that provides its some layer is time-based to provide the timeline that we have seen the first day. And playback is another plugin that allows to run an animation for time-based plugin. Add layer is this one. Is this button that allow to open the catalog. Filter layer is the plugin that allow to filter the layer here, and so on. There are many. Scale box is this one. Feature editor is the one that allow to edit the features, and so here I can edit for instance this island and change it. I can change, for instance, some values here, or edit here the geometry, or adding a shape. For instance, I can add this island and save. Now I'm not allowed to save because I'm in local environment and with the shapefile, so I'm not allowed to do that anyway. In production, you may be able to do it, and let's see. Moreover, I do an excursus of all the plugins. I'm almost finished, so you can you can even see what they are. And query panel is the panel that provides the filter, this filter panel that is available for feature editor or for filter layer. It's a support plugin that implements this specific panel for filtering. Meta.explorer is the catalog. It's an old name that have to be replaced probably in the future. Anyway, it is the catalog. Mouse position is this plugin that allow you to, if you click to show the current position in latitude and longitude or in the CRS you want. Then there is a search plugin that is this one that allow you to search some locations. For instance, here we are in Tanzania, for instance, and it will go to Tanzania, and then go full screen is this plugin that allow to go full screen and get back. I think that they are the same, go full or full screen. And talk item settings is the plugin that implements this settings panel that allow you to configure layers and styles. Here in the latest versions, we are going to introduce also a new editor, new cell editor. That it's very cool because it allows to edit the styles not only in SLD format but also using a graphic tool. Let me show it in dev. Sorry, clicked in the wrong button. Here I can, and the current styler allow you to edit the SLD as it is manually. The new tool allow to edit, use a sort of virtual visual editor that allow you to create and customize the style using a visual tool, color pickers and so on. And you can add, for instance, labels that show for, you can customize the font and you can add the attribute to show, customize the colors of each part, and it's very cool. You can even add the classification style. Now, to do this, you need a local, you need a a service, a plugin in MapStore that is not present in this. Anyway, you can, if you use it, if you install in your server, you can create classifications. So do this kind of colors, for instance. This color depends on the population, and you can create classifications like this. Anyway, take a look and stay updated about it because it's very cool in my opinion. Let's get back to the to our where it was. Okay, I lost it. Okay, it was. I clicked on all the tabs except that, and it's already included in the master, so you can use it, and even here in GeoNode now it's in development. So you probably it's still unstable because now we are using the master, of course, but and we are developing it, so it's going to be improved in these days to allow, for instance, sorting these parts and so on. It's interesting. Let's finish the plugins. There is the widgets and the widgets tray plugin that provides support to create widgets that are this kind of tools. You can create a chart based on layers, for instance. You can do some statistics on layers. You can change the colors and so on, and you can add them to the map so they can be. You can synchronize it to, as I said the previous time, to get only the data from the current viewport. So here you can get some statistics, for instance. Here I can just to be sure. Let me write a title for it. Because it's ugly without a title. And this plugin and the tray is this that allow to collapse and expand the widgets. The widget tray is this. Then save as provides the save as functionality here that allow you to save a map. And notification is the support for notification that sometimes you see here for errors or for such as things. It's the support, and then services config allow you to configure some custom services for search here, for instance, WFS. And we have almost finished. The save is of course, the save plugin. Save and save as are two different plugins, and the style editor is the one that I've shown you to. The talk item settings is a container, and the style editor is the plugin that implements this part. I think I finished. There are 40, so there are many plugins. As you can see, each part of the viewer is a plugin and can be attached and removed by editing the configurations. Here I also demonstrated it, that the changes are applied to the templates running it in edit mode. This is the template, so it's compiled by Python. Instead, the JavaScript part outside the template is compiled by the web backend server when I save files. So
Lorenzo,
yes, tell me.
In your plugin that actually shows the details of a layer, I know somehow it pick up some data from the database, and show some details of that point or road or whatever it is.
This plugin, you mean?
No. When you click a certain layer, there is a details that appears with that particular polygon or point or whatever it is. You know that details that pop up. Click any part of the map.
Okay, the info tool, yes.
The info, yeah, the info. Yeah.
The identify, yes.
Yes. Is it
What?
possible if I
Yeah.
have a certain picture maybe I took from a point, then it can be shown within there?
Yes. Okay. Let's see it. I know that. Yes. In MapStore. Okay. Let's see this difference. In MapStore, we have an additional tool that is not present in GeoNode. That is this. Let's see it. If you can see here, we have an additional tab for feature info. It is not present here. Here we have 3 tabs, and here we have 4 tabs. In MapStore, you can customize the template by using a template like this, for instance, and using properties. And you can imagine to include an image here with with the src with the src of an image. Anyway, this is present. This feature is present already implemented in the layer configuration of GeoNode, and for this reason it uses it. I'm not so expert at this. Let me see. There should be layers here.
Can you make a bonus to show some demonstration maybe?
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Because it's the first time I do it, but it should be some yeah. Oh no, not this. Let me remember. I've seen it once only. Okay. Anyway, this is a part of the configuration of the map. Anyway, these templates are included in the configuration of the map itself, and they are provided by GeoNode. Here you can see that here ms2config. That this is the configuration of the map with all the layers, and every layers will contain its own template. That now I don't remember where it is set in GeoNode and if it's possible to customize. I'll ask my colleagues. For sure, I see that if you for instance console log this instead. What I edited. Let's see. It's new map, new layer. Okay, is not the entry point I'm editing for the template I'm using. I did it. Okay, now I'm going to the correct page. This file contains the layer, and the layer every layer on the top contains feature info configuration with a template. And this template is provided by GeoNode. I don't know exactly where to customize it because it's part of GeoNode anyway. This is provided by the adapter in general. If you can see here in the MapStore adapter, this is built by, yes, this is it looks like it's coded here. Yes, this can be one of the changes you can do. For instance, one of the things that can be improved here is to allow to customize the template somehow here. It's a good enhancement that we can do in the implementation of the GeoNode for MapStore. Actually, GeoNode hardcodes a standard template to show attributes here. As you can see, let me go. Here in feature info, you have a template that is a big string. Now I cannot copy anymore. Let's refresh it. Yes, in this case, for every attribute, it creates a template that shows this format. If you want to add an image, at the moment, it's not possible in GeoNode, it's possible in MapStore. We can, of course, improve this template in order to provide a custom template here that allows to include images or something like that. This can be a good improvement for GeoNode itself. But actually, I think it's not possible. Yeah, until of course, if you don't modify your own, you don't fork the adapter for your purposes, but you can provide the generic, for instance, solution that allow to customize the template somehow. Yeah.
Can you demonstrate again the one that is within the MapStore, not GeoNode, the one that you showed?
This plugin, this template. This one.
MapStore. Yeah.
Yes.
MapStore.
This feature info.template is used here. This div class row, div class columns. If you inspect, this is the same. For every feature.
You're within GeoNode now, not MapStore, is it?
It's this template is generated by GeoNode Django adapter. Okay. Inside you can see it in GeoNode.py file. You can see it here, and this is generated here. For instance, if I change yes, and I add the class here, for instance, this is GeoNode template. add the class. This is a GeoNode template. Let's wait until GeoNode rebuilds. Unexpected indent. Okay, sorry. Let's wait that it rebuilds. Okay. I have to remove that bug. And here you can find for each element, for each attribute, you can see this additional class here. Does it helps you? I think I demonstrated that this is the template used. So if you want, for instance, to customize, but this is a generic for that template that is applied to every layer. But but if you customize a little bit or improve a little bit this policy, you can imagine to add some specific add some specific configuration for each map or each layer you want, and customize your own template and use it instead of using this that is generated on runtime. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
No problem.
it is within Django MapStore adapter.
Yes.
Thank you.
This yes, this is a part of the map, the creation of the JSON that is provided to MapStore in order to render the map. One of the part is the template, and Django customize it a lot. By default, MapStore uses the default GeoServers one, and if you want, you can customize it. Now, by default, MapStore uses text, but you can customize using HTML. That is another format provided by GeoServer, or you can use your own template here, and you can use properties. I don't remember if it is coming. What is the case for this anyway? If I no, it was state name. Yes, and in this case, in MapStore, I can customize it as I want. In the case of GeoNode, GeoNode uses the configuration originally created by this tool in order to customize its own view, and if you edit that, you can customize it and improve it. Okay, let's go to the next part. So basically, these are the main entry point: the template folder, the JS folder, the static folder, and each template, as I said, contains the HTML to create map, and includes as I said, includes the configuration, and it merges for some particular reasons. For instance, in this example that is in the maps in the composer template, here templates. You may find even this other utility that allow you to combine some configuration and then exclude some plugins. For instance, in this tool, we exclude widgets and so on in this particular layer edit configuration, because layer edit view don't need to save the whole map, but automatically it allows to edit the layer geometries and so on, and doesn't need the widgets or save plugins. And that's it. All these operations are done to create a configuration that is compliant to that particular use case. Setting locale and setting other configurations, and then initialize by and trigger some actions if needed. Additional actions to open the table of content or select the layer. For instance, in this case, for layer edit, what happens is that I select the layer and then open the Fisher grid. If you see the layers edit page, it starts with the Fisher grid opened. If I edit the layer, edit the data, here I see that the Fisher grid is already opened on the selected layer. And the layer is selected and the Fisher grid is opened. This is implemented by these two actions triggered after the initial load. And that's it. You can GeoNode controls the MapStore viewer using these utilities. Okay. Now, if you want to add a plugin, for instance, from the standard product, you have to do something similar to what we did yesterday with the standard product. For instance, here we have the annotation plugin that is not officially supported because I have some graphical glitch if you include it in GeoNode, but we can try it just for test. I can include it in plugins.js here. I can include it here. I can add it to the one of the configuration, for instance, the composer that is responsible to provide all the configuration for the composer, the editors inside the GeoNode. I add this, and let me close this. Let me close some of the pages in order to not confuse. Okay, let's do, for instance, let's go in edit of the map to get one of the composers, and I can see the annotations plugin added here. Annotations plugin is this, as you can see. Okay, I shifted the fingers. and you can add it if you want, for instance. So as well as we did in the previous part, instead of using adding it to local config, we add it to a configuration or to a specific template. It depends what you at what level you want to put this plugin. And let me remove this. And of course, include it in the build by editing the plugins.js file. If you want to create your own plugin, you have to do almost the same thing. Here is this example. You can create your custom plugin as we did before. I can create a directory called the plugins here that is not present. Sorry, it's present. Okay, sorry. I already created an example here. I can create an example file here. It's the same plugin we did in the yesterday meeting, and I can add it to this. So I can example plugin. Can do a require. Here we are plugins. And we will see our plugin. Yes, of course, I have to add it also to the configuration. I have to wait because the configuration is provided by GeoNode. So if it didn't compile it yet, I have to wait until it have compiled. Anyway, I cannot see it. Example. What I did now, Mongoly. Okay, I added this here. Let me see. Here. Let me remove first the debugger entry because otherwise I forgot it. Yes, for sure I missed something because I did it last time and it worked. Okay, I included it in plugins. Okay. I have to use default. As I said, we are going to harmonize all the imports, and now we have a plugin running here, and it's almost the same that we did yesterday. You can follow the same procedure. The only things that changes are the file you have to modify. Then I can continue with some exercises in order to develop a more complex and more useful plugin. Maybe we can continue doing an exercise that we did yesterday, but in GeoNode, just to take confidence with it. For instance, this time I'd like to I'll add, instead of adding a floating div here, that is not so beautiful, we can add an entry that adds an entry here in the menu and open a dialog. This can be helpful also for your plugins if you need. So let's improve this this plugin. Let me get some additional files that I prepared. Just a second. Okay. Here I've created a plugin. The only thing that is different is that this is a plugin for MapStore. Otherwise, here you have to use utilities from you have to import the files from the correct path. So instead of using the usually plugins defined in MapStore are in the plugins directory inside web client. Here instead we have to get them from MapStore client. Let's see if it works. There are too many dots. Here we are in plugins directory. You have to go up and up. It's okay. Let's see. Here you have to go up. I mean, JS directory, you have to go up once, not 2 times. Not dot slash /. I'm JS directory plugins file in plugins example. It's okay like this. Plugins example. Go one folder up, then MapStore web client. It's in the path seems to be correct. Okay. In this case, this plugin requires some epics and reducers that was originally defined it was an exercise that I wanted to do in MapStore, and I'd like to do it in this instead, and in GeoNode instead I have to create all these files instead of having them inside MapStore. I need to have them inside GeoNode. So these example reducer and example epic that are similar to the one that created the last time. Let's remove them for the moment because they are not needed at all. Now the build is done. I want only to show you the dialog. And now it works. Here I can use a dialog object from MapStore. You can find it in MISC. And I can control the visibility of this dialog by using an enabled flag that for the moment just for that have to be controlled by a reducer. And the other parts are not needed for the moment. Let me remove the body here, and let's simplify this exercise. You have to create in order to control this dialog, you have to create a toggle dialog action, and this toggle dialog action have to be triggered also by the entry in the burger menu that we need to implement. Here we will have a toggle lab. Let's create it here. It's not important to create files. I'll create them all in the plugins files just for this example. Anyway, you can redistribute them in the proper directory. Const reducer. I create an action that gets a parameter and trigger. Just to be sure that is unique. I create an action type, the action creator, and the reducer here. And the reducer have to intercept action.type, and if action.type is toggle, then I have to set enabled true. To action.enabled. Here I have a reducer that can be passed here. And I can pass set. This is set enabled. Okay. As you can see, here I create a piece of state that handles the enabled flag. By default is false. If you want, I can explicit this here. Initially, we have the initial state is this for this reducer. And when you trigger an action, if a toggle action is triggered, this one created by this action creator, the state is updated with the enabled. Otherwise, it is enabled by it's the same state. The state remains unchanged, so the reducer returns the old state. I registered it with the plugin system here with the name example, and here the component is connected as a map state to props that maps the enabled property of the component to state.example that is mapped here dot enabled that is a piece of state returned here. In addition, I mapped the property set enabled to the toggle dialog action creator. So when I call this handler from properties in the component here, I can, for instance, close the dialog in this case, and the action will be triggered. The last part is the part of the container that is the real new part. Here you can express, as I said yesterday, a container and some containers here in the definition of the plugins. The name, the key of this object, the keys of these objects are the plugin that are target of this configuration, and here the configuration depends on the plugin. So in this case, burger menu requires a configuration shaped in this way. That means a unique name, a position. I put a position, a big position, so I have this plugin at the end of the list. Then I can set some text, some actions to trigger. In this case, I trigger this. This is automatically dispatched by the burger menu. This is it's in implementation of the burger menu, triggering this the action returned by this, and then an icon. And do not hide is an option to if you have a container by default. The default component is hidden if it founds a container. This is useful when you have containers that are panel and you don't have to render, and the main component is rendered inside the container. Another option is to have the main component, for instance, the dialog, rendered anyway, and also the container renders its own part. So in this case, this is a part of the plugin system and container system. If you don't want to hide, that is the default behavior. If you don't want to hide the default component, you have to set the flag do not hide inside the container. So even if it finds this plugin, the default component will be rendered anyway. Because sometimes you don't need, for instance, if you have the table of contents or drawer menu, you don't need to render anything else, and the plugins is rendered directly inside it. But for this use case, we have this variable. This is documented in the plugin system documentation. These and other options. Let's see if it works now, or if we have some errors. I'm happy to see that nothing works. Let me save it. If I save it, maybe I have more chances that it works. Okay, now we have, yes, you see this new entry with the heart icon here. Heart icon here. The text example plugin. And if I click it, the action is triggered and the dialog is opened. And here I did something wrong, so I cannot dispatch. Set enabled is not defined. Here, set enabled. It's missing here. I didn't extracted it from props, simply. I can click here and I can close it. And here I can start inserting here whatever I want, a tool that does things that interacts with the map and so on. So summarizing what I did, I created a plugin that displays a dialog, and I followed the convention provided by the burger menu to add an entry in the burger menu, and when this entry is clicked, it toggles the action that shows my own dialog. my own dialog is controlled by this flag triggered by this action and handled by the reducer. So the visibility of this dialog, that is a component of MapStore, is provided by the flag that I extracted from properties and mapped from with map state to props. And I can continue adding some reducers and some state or something else I need, or I can do. That's it. This is the basic example. So this is I wanted to show it also because this is more useful than creating a div inside MapStore. Creating a dialog is more useful. You can, for instance, add a button here in the toolbar by adding this and doing the same for the toolbar, for instance. This is the convention is almost the same. Here I will have an additional button in the toolbar, that is this navigation toolbar here hidden with the heart. And if I click it, I can show the same behavior, I can show the dialog. I can even add the button that simply zooms and do nothing with all. I can remove all the plugin and create another plugin that do a call or do whatever I want by adding an action here. It's not important to open a dialog, but this is a very common use case. And that's it. So now we are able to create plugins in GeoNode as well as in MapStore. The procedure is the same. Then we can take a look in the last hour, in the last few minutes to the Django MapStore adapter. And later, then we can talk about some questions and answers. Questions about this point? Okay, let's continue. The Django MapStore adapter is the other part that we have seen. Is the model that takes care of save load functionalities and transforming the internal model in MapStore. Here in the structure is probably you are more expert than me looking at the structure of this file. Here you can find the API directory where it defines the model, MapStore resource, and so on. That is a class that is, let's see it. Models. Sorry, this is MapStore, I think. Yes. Yes. Here you have here in the models by I opened the GeoNode one models, the Django one, the MapStore adapter one contains the MapStore attribute and MapStore data and other MapStore resources that are persisted aside from the mapping of GeoNode. This allows to keep in memory the additional information that are not persisted in the standard map of GeoNode. So what this module effectively does here in the serializer is to persist and extract the information that GeoNode knows, like layers, maps, and so on, and attach near this configuration the JSON of the MapStore, the original JSON of MapStore, and when you load again the map, the two configurations are merged in order to provide a JSON to MapStore that is compliant with it, adding the information from map layers that are persisted in GeoNode, and adding also the remaining variables that are required for instance, widgets or other things that are specific of MapStore. If you save a map, that contains some widgets, for instance, the map layers and so on are persisted in a standard MapStore, just GeoNode model, and the other parts are still in JSON format and persisted in this MapStore resource data part that is a blob, a JSON field that is saved there. MapStore resource has also attributes that can be, for instance, the thumbnail is an attribute as a reference for the image, and also these information are handled here. Then here we can have an attribute of various types, and this provides the same model of GeoNode, basically. This is the backend of MapStore. So a resource that contains a blob with the JSON data and some attributes. And this is the same, all these resources is linked to the original map. As you can see, you have some here creation data entries that are also in the GeoNode in the original model. That is the blob of the map JSON, the original JSON that add attributes here. And this MapStore resources is connected to the map by ID. Other than in the API, we can find out also the entry point, perform create and perform update functions that are utilities to save and create the resources and the and call the related serializer to save our own map that is present in the plugins directory. Plugins directory. The serializer takes care to save data and attributes, and GeoNode.py takes care of convert the GeoNode configuration in the MapStore string and vice versa. So here in the serializer, you can see the functionalities to serialize JSON and persist MapStore resource in general. And it uses the functionalities that are here in GeoNode. Sorry, this serializer. This serializer, you can find the perform create and perform update that persist the model, the things in GeoNode, and then persist in MapStore 2. And the GeoNode, this part take care of converting, apart from some take care of convert the input JSON the GeoNode format in MapStore compliant format, and vice versa. This is the converter basically, and this is the serializer. There's not too much left to say about this. Other things are standard of a Python model, and the only thing that may be interesting here is if I find it. Yes, these files are all common of typical Django applications. Nothing more to say. Here some settings about some configuration that you can use. That's it about the GeoNode part. So if you want if you have some questions or some doubts or some things that you want to go in detail, we can do it. Do you want to do a break before this? Small break of 5 minutes.
Yeah, the remaining is only about the questions. Yeah, or we have another one before this. It's only about the questions.
Yes, if you want.
Yeah, I think
For
let's
me,
continue. Yeah.
Okay, we can
Masudi,
continue.
Yeah. Okay.
maybe this is an opportunity for us to discuss on how we can do some customization of
Yeah.
the Elias Academy regarding, because the way I've seen that is like those folder of Django MapStore adapter and GeoNode MapStore client, they need to stay side by side with the GeoNode project.
Yes.
However, the way we have seen it by using what we call GeoNode project folder, the way that we are installing using Docker, is not available. Maybe virtual is within the Docker images, but we need to see how we can integrate them and see how we can work with it as the way Lorenza has actually started. Maybe Edgar, can you have any advice, or Masood, how do we do? How do we go about it? Any idea, maybe?
No, I'm not a user of Docker, so I never used, especially I use a Docker in very special cases in the past, but I don't remember nothing. And for GeoNode, and for GeoNode, I never used it.
I've just posed challenge to my fellows. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gideon, as you said that that's a question I asked you before, how you can do this using instead of the Docker. But what I see for most of the cases in this documentation that they have updated now, I don't know much, but we need, I think, to shift it from the Docker and back again to the Ubuntu. Let's see what Edgar will say, because he's much more experienced compared to us under this environment.
Yeah, I think I could say the same thing. Maybe we could try to move away from Docker a little bit and grasp this concept, like do it without using Docker. Then if we have enough confidence to play around with it, we can try to experiment it with Docker, because I find it is much easier to do it this way.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. However, the way I've seen from the settings or from the requirements .txt file of GeoNode, I've seen that one of the requirements is that they are available GeoNode MapStore client and GeoNode MapStore adapter. So I assume that they are pre-installed and they come with GeoNode fully. So, but I don't know the location what, but we can think about it. But I borrow your idea, Edgar, that maybe we could practice this in the way that Lorenzo has started. Then when we competent enough, then we can see how we can integrate it with the Docker. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry that I cannot not provide any advice about that.
Don't worry, Renzo. You did your party at your best.
Yeah, you have played your part very well. So maybe we should try to do whatever we have learned so far, because this is a lot to process. So maybe when we sit down and we try as much as possible to imitate whatever we've tried together here, we'll get more understanding. So once we understand well the concepts, it will be easy to start doing innovation or doing what we want to do. So if we understand the basics, it is easy to go further steps.
Okay, so I hope I helped at at least to start understanding the basics. Okay, other questions?
Yeah,
Other questions?
that's true. The first question I have, your contact. Maybe what if we get some issues? How you can make a contact to you? In this
Yeah,
context,
tell me.
it's like it's not coming from the Resilience Academy again, because Resilience Academy, they have already finished their tasks to support us to be here today with you. But now we see, like a GeoNode, they have a guitar. How you can get to like that? Maybe guitar, whatever the reference you can give us, and we can access you if you have any questions.
Okay, you can. I don't know if you have some particular parts or things to do with our company in general. Anyway, you can write to a mailing list that for MapStore. That is, you can subscribe to the mailing list. You can find a form to subscribe directory on the dev. You can write your email here and subscribe to the. This is the user mailing list. This is the developer. Probably you need the developer mailing list of MapStore, and on the other side, you probably are already subscribed to the GeoNode one. I think that you can write some information here, write some question here, and someone from MapStore can reply. From my side, I'm talking in name of GeoSolutions, so probably you have to contact them before contact me. Okay.
Okay.
And anyway, if you write to the mailing list, some of our team, probably I or some of my colleagues can reply your questions about MapStore. And of course, if it's a question of GeoNode integration, you have to send it to the GeoNode mailing list. That I think I don't remember. GeoNode developers mailing list probably is here. I think it's this, but I'm not sure. I can give.
I'm there. I think I usually see a lot of questions people ask about MapStore.
Okay. Okay. So if you need my contact, I probably I can give you, but just to be sure, ask first my company, or at least on the mailing list, on the mailing thread that we shared with about this training. Ask to Simone some clarification about the possibility to have a contact with us.
Okay.
Okay. More questions?
Please do not forget to share your presentation today, please.
Okay, I'll send it now.
They are so good. They are so good.
Let me extract it while let me convert it into PDF and send it to the.
We don't have any question extra. Maybe we can give Venla to give a word of thanks from.
I have a last question.
Yeah,
Lorenzo.
me too. I will have last one.
Yes.
Lorenzo.
Yes. Tell me.
Can I deal only with the Django MapStore adapter and do some basic edition?
Yes. You can do it. And of course, it will be, because you are in edit mode, you can you will see your changes lively applied to that. For instance, here, just test it. Let's do it. Django MapStore adapter. I did it before, but API, for instance, here in the plugins GeoNode, when it is executed, I can do print. I don't remember what's the syntax for Python. I'm very. I think it's this, maybe single object.
Don't worry, you look better.
Okay. And when I execute this, for instance, when I load the map, I will see here in the console, I load the map here, I will see in the console that writes a test. And of course, you can modify whatever you want. In order to do some customization to this module, you probably have to fork and change the version here. If you look at there are two ways, of course, of contributing, of modifying one library that exists. Of course, there is a way of creating a general purpose functionality that is useful in general. For instance, if you here add the possibility to add some custom templates, that I think it's the thing you need, you may contribute to this module and do a pull request on GitHub on the GeoNode Django MapStore adapter. If you do a pull request for this to this product, this will be included. If accepted and reviewed and it works and it doesn't have bugs, it will be included in the default, the standard GeoNode modules. It's open source difficult contributions way, and you will find it in your Django module. The other way is, of course, if you need quick and dirty customization, you will need to edit your file and comment on your own fork of the product. And then instead, when you build your, if I do pip freeze, you have to customize your version of your for instance, you can add a string with the version and use that one to build your or use the edit mode to build GeoNode in general. You can use it in your own installation this way, or doing or creating a custom version and committing somewhere. Is it clear? Did I reply to your question? Maybe I didn't.
I think it's clear. I don't know where he is now. Gideon.
Okay. So one good contribution is, for instance, to to provide a system to remove this hard-coded part and replace and allow to provide a custom template. This could be a great enhancement. You can discuss it on the developer mailing list first, and it can be. I think that I can be happy to have some feature more. Okay. More questions?
Edgar, maybe.
Yeah. So mine might be a little bit out of this topic, but I feel like it is a good opportunity to ask it here. For example, yesterday and the other day, I was very excited on how you explained developing in MapStore 2. So I went to clone MapStore 2 and I tried to open a few issues. I just wanted to fix one issue. I was very excited. So I faced one
Good to
challenge.
know.
Yeah, so this challenge will bring my question. I was looking at the issues tagged like good first issue. So
Yes.
I believed those were very simple issues that I could experiment my understanding for these 2 days. So like my question is, if you find an issue you don't understand and you are excited to contribute in MapStore 2, what should you do? Should you just how should I put it? Like, how do you support people who want to contribute to
Yes.
MapStore?
Okay. You can write to the developers mailing list if you have some questions about an issue. Let me get them just to get an example.
Yeah. We can filter the good first issue. There is one old issue.
Yes. Yes.
Anyone.
For instance, this is very simple. I think that you have only to add one character here and add the unit test. So this is clear, and if the issue is so simple, you can provide a pull request that is faster than maybe than for instance ask if everything is clear. You can, and you want to contribute, you can ask, but you can even provide directly your pull request. If, for instance, this is a problem for you, you can contribute. And otherwise, if some things is not clear, and you are interested to solve this bug, you can ask clarifications on the mailing list or directly be in the issue. And this is useful also for us to clarify some details that maybe are not so clear in the issue. And you can, after you clarify, you can propose if it's a big contribution, we can discuss how to implement before or on the mail list or directly on the issue, and we can discuss how can it be implemented before, and we can do it together. And we are very happy to help people to contribute.
Okay.
The two main ways to communicate anyway is the developer mailing list and the just to clarify, if you find, for instance, a bug that you are not sure, you can ask there. Or if you need some things, instead of opening an issue, you can ask first. Otherwise, if an issue already exists, you can write on it and ask clarification and tell you are intended to solve some issues and and contribute the project. And we are happy to reply you. We are very busy, so maybe sometimes we can have a reply the day after or something like this, but we always reply. Hope I satisfied your I provided you the information you needed.
Yes. Absolutely. Actually, the reason I asked is because I felt like a good way to understand the MapStore 2 and all other stuffs which you have just shared with us is to experiment with it, because you will get more understanding and confidence even in doing contribution to the Israel Resilience Academy or something like that.
Good to know. And thank you very much. And do you have other questions or?
Yeah, yesterday I tried to log in after installing this MapStore 2, and what I got, it first log in from username admin and password admin. Give me something like that. Maybe you have experience of it.
Yes, you had problems to do that?
I mean that the system reject me after installing to my machine, the MapStore
Yes,
2.
yes, you installed MapStore, and let's try. If you want to share your screen, let me stop the recordings because maybe is not needed in the recording at all. Anyway, let me. I changed my idea. Maybe it's useful also for the other colleagues if we find some bugs or some tricks to apply. If you want to, you can share your screen and you can show me your problem. If okay, thank you. You are running in dev mode, okay?
Yeah.
And you configured the backend in Tomcat, or you didn't?
No, I didn't do anything. After this one, I tried to run
Yes,
some commands.
probably this is the problem. But yes, I think that this is confusing, and probably we need to remove this option as well as MapStore is used somewhere else, and so maybe this can be annoying somehow. By default, MapStore, when you run in edit mode, uses the remote development server that is a private of the solutions anyway, and so the credentials are not public. To use your own credentials and your own user, you have to install the backend in a local Tomcat.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have to download or build your own map store and deploy in a Tomcat, and then configure the build config.js to point to that server in order to use your own. And in this case, the default credentials for a standard MapStore build by your own or downloaded is admin and user. It's explained. I'm going to share my screen again. The information, you can find this information here. Here in this slide of that I sent you yesterday. The Webpack server proxy is configured to use as backend that.mapstore.solutions.at. You can use your own test instance, editing buildconfig.js and setting it to local config. For instance, localhost.8080 here. You can replace here in let me open MapStore again. Here in build config.js, I did it yesterday. I configured localhost 8080 here, and I'm sorry, this is not the case. I replaced all these HTTPS to HTTP. '8080, and also here you can replace. I don't think it's mandatory, but you can edit the dev server proxy here, and here I have an instance of Tomcat with MapStore deployed here. I build it running build.js from my script, and I deployed here. and so it's running a port 8080, and I can connect it to that port. Now this is running because it's the same that contains the GeoNode of GeoServer. This is the trick I used. And so if I do npm start here with these changes and with this MapStore running in a different Tomcat, sorry. Now I have to go back to the directory of MapStore. If I run it, instead of having an interface with all these maps that are not that are the ones that you can find on demo server, you will find an interface with no maps and with the user, instead of being the users of the dev server, will be the users of your own server, and you can create as many maps and as many users and groups you want in your own installation, of course.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's cool now.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, let's see if there are any question. You can make a contact to you through the way you told us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can ask Ivenla to give a word from Resilience Academy after 3 days of this training.
Sorry?
Venla, are you with us?
Okay. Okay. Venla. Okay.
Yeah, I think she's not around.
No, maybe he's muted.
Yeah.
I see her in the call anyway.
Okay. By the way, Lorenzo, thank you a lot for your 3 days time to come and train with us. It is a good practice for us and give us a memory of what we had with Alessio last 2-3 months, I think, in Finland. But this one also is very, very good. Actually, what you are doing there is not only for 3 people you see from the list here. We have academy here, and you are going to teach each and everything to see how you can use this MapStore technology, GeoNode, GeoServers in our environments. And that
Good.
what they did, Resilience Academy, that is the one. Maybe you know only from UTU, University of Turku, but we have another 4 universities from Tanzania. So the knowledge behind this one is distributed in 4 universities. You can imagine how many students they will learn from this one. Maybe after 1 year, you'll see that we have already taught about 5,000 to 10,000 students per year coming from different universities in Tanzania. So thanks a lot, thanks a lot, GeoSolution, for supporting us, and still we continue to work with you to make sure that our Resilience Academy and other GeoNode platform that we have in our universities, they will grow big and big and big, like the way you have different countries around the world.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. So have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And nice to meet you too.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.